Good morning. I'm Myra Schultz. I'm your facilitator. You haven't seen me for a while, but I have quite a reputation as a facilitator, primarily because for years I've been telling everybody to turn off their phones, so please do that. We do not want an interruption. And I actually threatened people with bodily harm if they didn't. So our next special member event is Ponies and Passes, the story of Lewis and Clark here. The presenter is Bruce McKellish. Sorry, Bruce, if I mispronounced that. It's Thursday, September 21st at 11 o'clock. This lecture is hybrid and the in-person section is almost full. And then my script says, please turn off your cell phones, but of course that's my thing that I tell you first to off. Please hold your questions until the end of the class. And this course is being recorded and will be uploaded to the share file folder within a couple of days. I think you got that in your email. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to be learning as we go. This is not the microphone we're supposed to use, but it's the one that's here. So welcome, everybody. Tell me about parking. Was it okay? Okay, let's talk to Terry and wait a minute, I'm not getting everybody's name. Karen Henriksen. There's a Karen Thixton I just met in Cincinnati, sorry. Steve Hessler, that's who I am, and welcome. If you were here before, once upon a time in a Molly class in the recital hall, great to see you. And new, first time? Great. So we're going to play for you very soon, 4 of us, and you'll meet in a moment. You'll meet Barbara Barbara's coming out a little bit later. Chris Hahn, Dorothy Peterson, Marjorie McDuffie Watley, and I are going to play for you a piece by Rachmaninoff, originally for one person, one piano, but now for 2 pianos and 4 people, and we're going to play it as Happy Birthday. So before my colleagues come out, and you'll meet them and hear them, so let's first, and I have, the reason it's supposed to be a microphone I don't have to hold so I can play. So you're going to just, that's, with me. Okay, now you're going to say Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff. Again. Rachmaninoff. Okay, now you're going to think it, but never say it again. But that's his autograph. That's his signature rhythm. So at the end of the second concerto, you'll hear, can you hear me sort of? The second concerto you'll hear next week with the symphony at the end of the week, and you'll get information about that as well. And that's one reason we're starting early, so we can think forward and prepare ourselves to enjoy the piece even more. But the end of that concerto, he just signs his name that way. And this piece, you'll hear it from the very first notes. So we're going to play it for you first. You're going to hear the opening section with the boom, da-da-da, boom, 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 da-da-da. It's Rachmaninoff. Happy birthday, Rachmaninoff. 150 Rachmaninoff. So that's Rachmaninoff. It turns out, guys, that I'm just until November 6th, keep my birthday in mind. My favorite color is blue, in case you want to buy something. So my birthday, I will no longer be exactly half his age. Does that make sense? Right now, I'm exactly half of 150. Isn't that interesting? So I started thinking about that. He turned 150 on April 1st, Western calendar. In Russia, they also use the Orthodox calendar, right? What do they call? One is Gregorian and one is Julian. So they use that, and he turned 150 on April 1st, and I'll turn 76, so then I can't be half his age anymore, ever again. So it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. He couldn't be here today, so, so I'm taking over. So here come Chris and Dorothy and Marjorie, and I will play for you this wonderful prelude in G minor, and then we'll get on with the course, and we have a lot of music for you, some of it recorded, some video. We'll get started. If you have questions along the way, maybe jot them down, and we'll get some time, and it's maybe hard to hear the questions, but keep them in mind. So here come my colleagues. Okay, guys. Yep. They're waiting. Okay. Marjorie. Yes. And Dorothy. The flowers are from Gary's in my garden out on, yay. So we may still have flowers next week. This is our frost meter. right, so they will disappear and reappear. So thank you so much. So if parking, and trying to find parking didn't wake you up, that should. So we'll think about parking things. I got here just before 8, and the Adams lot still had a lot of spaces, so think about that. And the flowers are here, and we'll think about that. So that was Rachmaninoff. Rachmaninoff. And I have links for you when you get home. You'll see the PowerPoint, and the most recent one will have the links so you can listen to the pieces as the week goes on and kind of review them. Are you okay to hear? Is that all right with the speaker? Okay, so I'm going to come back over here, and that was our first slide, and we're going to go on a little bit here. That was you saw it, the Rachmaninoff, and my laser pointer isn't here this morning, but on the left you see the red circle. That's that rhythm. So that's very much what goes on with Rachmaninoff signing his name with the rhythm. All right, and so that's what you just heard. And you see that he lived like 3 days short or 4 days short of 70 years old. And we'll go back through these things, so I'm not going to take time right now, so we'll come back to that. But I thought it was interesting to see approximately where he was born. So the lower part of that blue line is the area where Rachmaninoff was born. So it's about the distance from there to Spokane, if you will. From Missoula to Spokane, it's the same distance up to St. Petersburg. Now, Rachmaninoff's mother was the heiress to 5 estates in this Tsarist time in Russia. That's a lot of land, a lot of money, if you will, a lot of, I guess, wherewithal. But you could say that, therefore, Rachmaninoff's father married very well. I think it's a dowry or something like that. However, she did not marry so well. So over the course of about however many years, they had 6 children. I think he was the 3rd. You'll have to help me review all this new information because we don't necessarily go to what are the names of all of his siblings. But the father basically lost all 5 estates. He had to sell them off one at a time to pay his debts. So that's a factoid that really played into his life. So I'm learning a ton just to enjoy learning about his life as well as his great music. So St. Petersburg becomes very important in his life. Then also from their estate to Moscow, you see they're almost halfway in between. But Moscow is more like driving from Missoula to Ellensburg, Washington, almost exactly that distance from where he was born. And so when the money ran out, they moved into an apartment in St. Petersburg, and that changed his trajectory for study, and we'll come back to that. So then, in this picture on the left, you see Rachmaninoff in St. Petersburg as a little 10-year-old, okay, cute kid, and a really already very good pianist. And when we come back around, you're going to learn that he was kind of a naughty boy. He was so smart and so talented that he really didn't have to practice, unlike the rest of us. And so he kind of got by on his good looks and whatever, and they called him a truant student. And so he even is reportedly to have falsified his report cards for his parents. So I'm sure that's been tried before. But the big point is that he ended up not getting into the St. Petersburg Conservatory 3 years later, even though he'd been studying there. But they were like, well, where have you been the last 3 years, kind of. I mean, he did. He did his great learning. But he ended up having to go to Moscow, and we'll talk about that. So here is the St. Petersburg Conservatory. On the left, you see it back in 1913, and he lived till 1943, so he would have known that building inside out, literally. And you see it's pretty much the same building in current day, but now it's been added some porticos there and different things remodeled, but it's still the same building in the same place. So that's the St. Petersburg Conservatory. These were started by 2 brothers. Anton Rubinstein, great pianist in Russia, he started the St. Petersburg Conservatory, and his brother Nikolai, and Rachmaninoff knew both of them, and Nikolai Rubinstein started the Moscow Conservatory. And there's a picture of that coming up. And you'll learn about this transition in Rachmaninoff's life, and this is the transition where Not only did he have to practice 3 hours every day without fail, his life depended on it practically with that stern piano teacher. Does he look like he's going to put up with nonsense? He's the older guy, the teacher. And they were these three people. They were so talented, and Rachmaninoff was in the middle there of the three boys. They were allowed into his studio, but they had to stay in his home. There were bedrooms for each kid, and one of them had to practice at 6 o'clock every morning for 3 hours. And so they like traded off for that honored role. And there was one kid, they said, that tried to shave 5 minutes off. Well, they said, God forbid you should try to shave 5 minutes off your 3 hours. So they all learned good discipline. And here are more of the students that he had in that time period. I mean, these are kids who every Sunday afternoon they got to have guests at the house, like Tchaikovsky and the Rubinstein brothers and Alexander Zloty that you're going to learn about. And here's Rachmaninoff's huge hands. You don't necessarily see them with Rachmaninoff on the left, but you sort of see that they're monster paws, but he wasn't a monster. I put it in for fun. But look on the right side. That's not my hand, but it's similar to my hand. We'll add a couple more notes to that span, and that's what Rachmaninoff could reach. So he was sort of born for that keyboard. Amazing. And here's the Moscow Conservatory. And so now we're going to put the lid back up here. The Prelude in C-sharp minor. This was a piece he wrote in 1882. 92. I'm looking at the 1892. He finished this piece and he performed it for the first time on this date in 1892 in a recital. And the world started to go crazy with this piece. They just loved it. And you're going to learn about his cousin, Alexander Zloty, a lot next week, but just in mention this week. And his cousin started playing concerts all over Europe, all in Germany and Norway and Belgium, everywhere, Amsterdam, Paris, France, everywhere. And he started using Rachmaninoff's C-sharp minor prelude as an encore. And Rachmaninoff was still a student when he wrote the piece. He was a composition and piano major, just like we have composition and piano majors here. And he's writing this piece, but he says, and you can read about it, it just came to him, and it wouldn't let him go until he put it down on paper. Well, it came to haunt him. He got 40 rubles. I don't know what that means, $200 maybe, but that's all he ever got out of that whole piece. And he said that was the worst mistake of his life and the best mistake of his life, because then when his cousin Alexander started playing it all over Europe and the United States, who wrote that? Who wrote that? And before long, they just couldn't wait to hear Rachmaninoff play. So it was like his calling card. The sad part for him is that he had to play it. They would not let him go home until, after the concert, until he played that piece. And he just, he came to, do I really have to do that? I mean, I was just a kid when I wrote it. But it's a great piece, and Barbie Blagan is going to play it for us this morning. And before you do, I'm not going to play this all for you, but I'm going to learn how to do my switcheroos here and just let me get better at doing this because it's all new to me. Okay, and here, and so now you're going to hear just the opening sounds of a 1919 recording, 1919, think of it, 104 years ago. And recording was starting to happen, and the Edison Recording Company got Rachmaninoff to play this. So isn't it neat that we have some actual recordings of this guy playing? And we have all the way up to 1940 when he recorded some of his last recordings, made some of them. And by then he had a contract with RCA. I think it was even then called RCA Red Seal because the middle of the 78 RPM record was a red seal. and his master's voice. Any of you remember crank-up phonographs? I have one in our garage out in Sunlight Lane. Anybody? Cranked up phonographs? Yeah. And the 78 RPM record, I'll tell you more about that later. But let's go ahead now, and Barbie Blagan is going to come out and play for us this beautiful C-sharp minor prelude. And if you have 40 rubles in your pocket, you can share that with Barbie. I'll put the tip bowl out. I'm going to shut the microphone off. I think I'll just leave it here. And then Chris is going to put the lid up. He's our master of lids. And this is Chris Hahn, dear colleague. I'm retired now, but not too tired, so just retired. And here comes Barbie, our wonderful Barbie Blagan. Her sister, you know, Judith, who was a Metropolitan Opera star. Barbie has a recording. We might get to play it during the 6 weeks. A part of it for your listening pleasure is a recording with the New York Philharmonic, a double concerto, right? CPE Bach. So here comes Barbie. Thank you for Barbie. That was so beautiful. How many of you played this piece? Great, you're on next week. So, but how many of you have heard this piece? Familiar? Like the whole world knows this piece. And the 40 rubles thing was really true. He never got it. There wasn't even such a thing, maybe, as an international copyright back then. So the publishers made out like bandits, right? They didn't have to pay a thing, and people were buying it faster than they could print. So everybody was playing it. I wanted to play it when I was a kid. I bought the music at the music store, and I said, Miss Turin, could I learn this piece? And she said, honey, you can learn it on your own. You know, we're not going to take time for, you know, I have more important things for you to do. So you could say hackneyed in a way, but it isn't. It's such a great piece. But when everybody does it, I suppose it becomes common. However, it again was his calling card in a way. So it was like his forebearer of his own talent and his expertise and his beautiful playing as well as his beautiful writing of music. So we'll move on a little bit here, because we're going to play a couple more pieces before my colleagues, I don't know, they seem to be hanging out there. There must be coffee in the back room. I'll be with them soon. Let me get back out of this and into my PowerPoint again. And current slide. So you just heard that, and you heard a little bit, and when you go home, it'll be ready for you to listen. Let me know next week, or email me or something if there are troubles with hearing these things. Now, this is a very interesting little side trip, and you're not going to see the whole thing right now, but you are going to see a little bit of a movie that Barbie and I, sorry, this kind of microphone kicks in and out a little bit. So you see a picture of Barbie there, and you just met her, and most of you probably know her, and we love Barbie. And here she is playing the role, and this was a true story. The person that used to be our financial person for the foundation from the School of Music, Kristen Gold was her name, Kristen Gold Stagg. And her husband, Tom Stagg, was a media arts major here, and he had an assignment. And the assignment to graduate, among others, was to make a short film. And it could be of a topic of his choice. So he thought something that had happened in his life that was just fascinating to him. He was up in Anchorage visiting a brother or somebody, and he was staying in a house, maybe with his family, and the next door neighbor was a piano tuner. And they have them even in Anchorage. They have pianos and piano tuners. And so Tom's next door neighbor, the piano tuner, started telling him, they were just conversing about a story of a person that he used to tune her piano. And then she became afflicted, if you will, with some form of dementia, and it kept progressing. And her daughter just felt so sad because her mother no longer knew her. So you're going to see a little bit of this film, and you'll get the gist, and you can watch it at home. It's about 13 minutes. I am actually the person playing the Rachmaninoff C-sharp minor prelude, as you hear, and just a snippet. And then Barbie is playing the role of the mother. And so let's see if I can get this going. A beautiful plug for Montana at the beginning of this, if it shows it.
Mom's changed a lot. It's good she's here.
Okay, set it right there in the light.
She doesn't even know we're here.
May I say hello?
Just don't expect too much. who's here. It's Mr. Rosano. You know Enrique. He's here to tune your piano.
Hello, Mrs. Miller. Beth knew you'd want it here.
That's yours, Annie. That's your piano.
Do you want to go see it?
I can't perform for the public. Stage fright.
The audience would love you.
Perhaps you can be my audience.
Annie?
Butterflies.
Mrs. Miller. Here's one you like.
Interesting, yes. Could you hear okay? Is it all right? Too loud? Okay? Thumbs up? Okay, I just want you to help me with that. So this movie goes on for several more minutes, but the music in real life brought the mother back, not forever, but intermittently maybe, and in reality it was the only thing that connected her to her daughter in that moment. So it was quite lovely. So you will watch that, I think, and enjoy it and appreciate it from your own living room. So that's a wonderful movie that Tom Stagg put together, and I think it was in the Sundance, various kind of, sort of docufiction, because it was based in reality. So that was neat. Okay, let me get that. And back to this. Second. So next, we're going to play for you. This was 1892, and think of it now, Brahms. He was still living. Rachmaninoff was just 19 years old in 1892, almost a 20-year-old, and he was now at the Moscow Conservatory, and we'll come back around to that. But in 1890 and 1891, he had summertime. That was his time, and he had lots of relatives, and so the Satin or Satina family are cousins to Rachmaninoff, and there were 3 daughters and a son. The son, I think, was the oldest, and then 3 daughters. Or no, Natalia may have been the oldest. What's important about that, and you don't have to take notes, and there are no exams, but if you don't raise your hand that you know the answer, you have to come up and play the piano. So the Satinovs family, they were his first cousins. So this is complex because ultimately he married Natalia, the oldest daughter, because they had become best friends and confidants and best supporters and loved ones over the years. And they supposedly had to get permission from the Russian Orthodox Church and from the Tsar, and they had to pull some fancy stuff to get married. And then they had 2 daughters. But next door to the Satina family, the three daughters that he knew from there, was a family, the Scalone. I'm probably saying it wrong, and some of these aren't even Russian names, but Scalone. And the Scalone family had three daughters. And Rachmaninoff, before he fell in love with Natalia, he sort of fell in love with Vera. I think she was the youngest, but she was one of the three Scalone sisters next door and they were also relatives. So he wanted especially to write letters to Vera of Scalone, and the mother of the three daughters, of the Scalone daughters, said, "You will not write to my daughter." She put a stop to that, as mothers tend to do. Maybe they know everything. And so we're going to play for you now two pieces. One we're going to play with Marjorie, and Chris and I we're the other two Scalone sisters, I guess. So I'll be on the left side of this piano. Chris will put the lid up, and we'll have three benches on one piano and 6 hands all vying for position. We had to have some discussions about who was going to get out of the way. And these three sisters got to play these pieces in their home because it was a sweet thing that Rachmaninoff wrote for them. And this is before he's famous, but just a year before he writes the great C-sharp minor prelude. So you're hearing today some of the growth in Rachmaninoff's work. So now we welcome Chris and Marjorie first. You guys are doing fairly well with the applause, but not too well with the rubles yet. So this piece is a waltz, and it's not too complicated because it can't be for 6 hands all vying for the keyboard. I have a score. You have it? It's the white one. I'll get my score, and I'll keep my mouth shut for a few minutes. Yes. Sisters don't always get along, so that's why we thought we'd just set the stage with a brother-sister relationship. So it's so great to have great colleagues, and this is so fun. Part of this course is fun because a lot of people are playing the piano. In a few weeks, you'll get a prelude, as it were, or a preliminary. dress rehearsal in a way for our great pianissimo, 5 grand pianos on stage. So you'll learn about that. And you're going to see today an invitation for next week for you guys to come and hear the dress rehearsal of the Rachmaninoff Second Concerto with a great young man that I've known of, because he's from Tacoma, basically, or Olympia, Washington. And so when I've been over there adjudicating, everybody was talking about Charlie Albright. So you'll get to know about Charlie. So now Barbie's going to come out, and Chris and Barbie and I are going to play for you the other piece that Rachmaninoff wrote for the Scalone sisters. And that's a romance, and it's important, and we'll come back to it, because some of the themes in that movement or that piece get used in his second piano concerto and in his Opus 17 piano suite, and you're going to get acquainted with those over the next class periods. So it's already, he's borrowing, if you will, or building on his early ideas. So this was a great thing, and you'll hear the beauty of the romance. Barbie can't reach. Thank you for the applause. So, isn't that a beautiful piece? Just lovely. It's, you know, the waltz was kind of fun and cheerful, and it was written first, and then the romance was written about a year later, probably the next summer. I can't read Russian, so I don't know which month it says, but he signed at the bottom the date of each of those two pieces. So those are before the big works start to happen. And I think we're going to take a little bit of time, and I'm just going to review my main PowerPoint here, so that I know we have time to do everything. I shut my phone completely off. It's my only watch, so tell me what time we're at right now, just somebody. I better get my... 9:49. Okay, great. So we'll go a little bit, by 10:10 I want to be playing part of the Rachmaninoff second concerto for you guys with Chris, and that'll be wonderful to hear. So you heard now these, and you can hear these at home. So these are the links down at the bottom of the screen, and they should be active, but if not, you can cut and paste and put them up on your, I think it's called the URL, and then, or you are angry, or you are something. You are frustrated, perhaps. And nothing was working here this morning when we got here, so we were glad for Adam Collins, who teaches theory, and other wonderful cello students, and he came in and got us going. So that was great. So here is I want to share a little bit with you, and I have to get out of the screen. I can see we're still working on this part. So the point of this next thing is that, let me just get to that one. So there were two ways that Rachmaninoff made recordings. And he was very, very skeptical of this contraption. Someday maybe I'll take a picture underneath my Mason and Hamlin grand piano in the living room, because underneath the piano, and it was 1931, so all of you think about that year, and we all know about the Depression. And so this piano was for sale in Chicago, and it was supposed to have a player mechanism inside of it for extra $100 or something back in those days. And it didn't, because maybe the Depression, people weren't buying pianos and they weren't going to be extravagant, so they just bought a plain grand piano. It's a beautiful piano, but it was supposed to have this mechanism. And that mechanism is, and I'm going to move down just a little bit here. How did that happen? I'm going to just bring this screen up. Okay. No, just wait. Pause. Come on. You see what I'm learning here? I learn way more than you do. Okay, we'll come back to that, and then it'll play right away. So you're going to hear what sounds like a totally modern piano, because it is. So this player thing, the great artists were invited to play their pieces, and it would go on a roll. And that roll was different from the standard punched rolls of the player pianos that a lot of people had in their homes. Maybe some of you had one as a kid, or grandparents had one. But this was different. This would do the pedaling, it would do the dynamics, it did everything. And Rachmaninoff said, I can't do that. I mean, I'm already busy with Edison and RCA 78 RPM records, that's fine. No, you have to try this. And after he made a recording and he heard it played back on a real piano, it sounded just like he had just recorded it, which because he had. And he said, I have finally heard myself play. Isn't that interesting? So I'm not going to play this whole thing. You're going to listen to it at home, but just listen to the quality of the sound. Did you notice the 78 RPM little on the other recording of the C-sharp minor prelude made in 1919, and this was maybe the 20s someplace, I forget the date, but you'll hear just a little bit of it, and you'll hear the really great sound, and this was probably reproduced, because these were reproducing pianos. The name is Ampico. It's very clever. You know how Conoco means Consolidated Oil Company? Well, Ampico means American AM Piano, P-I, company, American Piano Company. So Ampico, so he made an Ampico, and he made a bunch of them. I think there are at least 18 of him playing his own pieces. And then there are other recordings, and I'll get a list. You can actually look it up on Wikipedia and see the Rachmaninoff recordings. You'll see a giant list of Chopin and different composers, Schubert maybe, and then his own, and then you'll see the Ampico recordings as well. And you can scroll around through your computers and become experts. Here's his beginning of his elegy. Now this piece is Opus 3 number 1, and what Barbie just played for you is Opus 3 number 2. So you see he put pieces together after he wrote. He made a collection. Oh, these would make a nice set for the publisher and for the people that want to learn some of these pieces. So this is a gorgeous piece, and you'll hear it at home, but here's part of it for the sound. You're hearing this very romantic time taking called rubato, and this is the romantic ideal, and he was arch romantic. Isn't that gorgeous? That's him playing, his playing. So unlike regular player pianos, you hear the dynamics. So gorgeous. And you've been hearing pieces that have an opening section and a middle section and a repeat of the opening section at the end with some climactic. So that was common. That was called the arch form, or the ABA form. A and B is different, A's comes back. And this is the return of the opening section. So the music has balance, proportion. Applause, I think. I guess I lied because I said I just let you hear part of it, but you know, you just got to hear all of something. And so this is so great. I mean, this music is just from the soul. And you can hear that in 1885, his mother in St. Petersburg finally got on to his antics at the St. Petersburg Conservatory. And so next week, we're going to talk a lot about Rachmaninoff's cousin, Alexander Ziloty, who was 10 years older, almost exactly 10 years older than Rachmaninoff, so a man of the world and a concert artist and a student of Franz Liszt. And so the mother said to Alexander, what are we going to do with this boy? He's now, 12, I think, in 1885. And he's going to be a failure. What can we do? Well, he needs to go to Moscow and he needs to study with Nikolai Zverev. And that's that person I showed you, and you'll look at these PowerPoints at home. And this is the guy that you had to practice 3 hours every day without fail. But on Sundays, Tchaikovsky and Rubinstein's and Ziloty would come, and others, and Chekhov and different playwrights and opera people. It was open. And they were not allowed to perform for the kids. The kids were able to perform whatever they wanted for Tchaikovsky, for example. Isn't that something? So it changed his life. So things like that happened, and it worked out for good. And then he graduated from the Moscow Conservatory, and I showed you a picture. So we'll come back, and I want to show you just before Chris and I share with you the first movement of the second concerto, which is the centerpiece of his life, really. And there's a reason, and you're going to go through that reason a little bit right now. So let me get back to our slides. And we'll scroll through a little bit. Here's Barbie as the recalling mother, and the Scalon sisters pieces. And so you'll go through, here's the recording with the Rachmaninoff on the Ampico, and here's Julia, who's not with us today. She had to go back to Seattle to attend to her family, but she's inviting all of us to the dress rehearsal on the Friday night, the 22nd, with Charlie Albright of the second concerto. And then there is going to be, I think, Chris and you guys are working it out. Do I hear 10 to 12? Is Chris back there? 10 to 12 on Friday? A week from this Friday, 10 to 12. You're welcome. Park early, park 3 blocks away and walk, have a good walk, whatever you can figure out. And then come and enjoy the master class. Is that what it is? Wonderful. So that's a terrific opportunity. And there is going to be then the dress rehearsal, and then there's always the pre-concert talk that Julia does. So you'll have those opportunities, you're invited. And so this is important kind of to know about. I'm missing one slide, but that's all right. So this will give you a little bit of an idea, if I can make it play, just a sec. Come on, there we go. This is Rachmaninoff's Vespers. So he had a great feel for vocal writing. And next week you're going to hear one of our music majors sing a piece, and Barbie's going to accompany her. It's called Lilacs, so you'll hear that next week in a live setting. But this is just, and this will be just a snippet. So the beautiful themes in the second concerto, or all of his music, they stem from the voice in a way. Not that he was a singer, but he conducted the opera for a while in Moscow, and he wrote this wonderful set called Vespers. So this is just one of the movements. This, interestingly, is the Washington State Chorale. So it's a neighboring, probably in Seattle, probably a nice church in Seattle. If anybody knows what it is, let me know. Oh, this is what I wanted you to see. Okay, so this was the big moment. So backing up, this is the playing of his first symphony. This is what leads to the second concerto. When he in 1897, okay, now he's grown up. 1892 is the Prelude in C-sharp minor. So 5 years later, by then he's written a full symphony, and he's so eager to have it premiered. And I'm going to give you a little hint. It was a disaster. I mean, they said this person should not write another note as long as he lives, in effect. That's what the critics said. How would I feel if nobody came next week and you said, if there were a Molly course in hell, Hessler should teach it? And that's what they said about Rachmaninoff's symphony. They said if there's a symphony in hell, they should play his symphony because it's not worth a damn, may I say. But but this is the beginning. So he went into a deep 3-4 year depression, totally wrote almost nothing, despondent. I mean, his life was over as far as he was concerned. But it turned out, I'll tell you the reason partly for the so-called failure, but listen just to this symphony, which he never allowed to be performed anywhere on the planet in his lifetime. The manuscript of the score disappeared. You can guess, but so they had to, when they reconstructed, they had to find the parts, right, and just put it all into a new score. So this is a little bit of that symphony. You can go home and listen to all of it or some of it, but it's very promising. So there was another reason, the failure. So listen to that at home. It's very promising writing. And he felt that, and he knew it, and he thought he was actually opening up new avenues into the 20th century, or approaching the 20th century. And then the critics said otherwise, and you'll read about that. Let me see if I can get that to go here. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's, sorry, that.
Cole, he's my miracle child.
Well, that's great.
So how does your miracle child get cancer? How does that happen?
Bear with me.
There was a mass, basically a tennis ball-sized tumor at the base of his brain. We were then rushed over to our local children's hospital.
There. Okay. Quite a job here. Okay, so I'm just going to talk you through this. So the conductor of that first performance in Russia was Alexander Glazunov. I think it's Alexander. And we talked about him in Keyboard Lit a lot through the years because this guy was a teacher and a conductor at the, I think, St. Petersburg, but I have to bring my PowerPoint back up. And when you're nervous, it's hard to do that when everything's not cooperating. So let's get back to that. There we go. So, here he is, and I'll bring him up. So you will see why. Slideshow, current slide, there he is. So on the left is Alexander Glazunov. So in Keyboard Lit, we kind of came up with the joke, is one Glazunov? Because he was a severe alcoholic, and he was apparently quite drunk when he rehearsed and when he conducted that piece. So it was like swimming all over the place. And you see on the right, he emulated the Egyptians, I believe, and they figured out how to siphon. So it was actually true that he had a rubber hose or some kind of hose from his desk drawer to his breast pocket so he could have a little sip when the lessons became unbearable. So one Glazunov, and there's if there were a conservatory in hell, you can read about that at home. So, and then several years later, Alexander Zaloty, his cousin, again, comes into his life and was never absent from his life. And we'll talk about him a lot next Wednesday, a week from today. And he suggested, and along with other people, this hypnotist, basically a hypnotherapist named Nikolai Dahl. So Rachmaninoff's second concerto is dedicated to Nikolai Dahl. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to play for you this example. Well, maybe I will, 10 seconds. This was a very good friend of Rachmaninoff's, a lifelong friend, a very famous singer, Fyodor Chalyapin, maybe. And you'll hear a little bit. Just raise your hand if you recognize the tune. And this maybe will play. Good, it's not playing yet. So our words are, what is it? Hove, ho yeeve ho, something like that. But Russian I don't know, but that's a real song. In 1886, when Rachmaninoff had just left St. Petersburg, another one of the faculty at St. Petersburg collected Russian folk songs, and that was one of them. So he would have known this, and it's not that the second concerto emulates this piece at all, but it's sort of so there's a sort of a Russian seriousness, not talking about the vodka and the sippy thing, and there's sort of Russian in sound. It's not just a pretty melody. And then the second theme, because pieces, you're hearing pieces that have an opening section, a middle section, and a closing section, and the good pieces have that, and this does in a way. But in this case, there's a second theme that contrasts the first. Can you hear me just for the moment? Okay. If you can't enjoy it, enjoy your time. So Rachmaninoff could spin a beautiful melody, and that's a beautiful melody. So in this piece, the second concerto, that grew out of this hypnotherapist who said, because Rachmaninoff had promised to write a piano concerto for the London Symphony, because he'd been touring in Europe a little bit and was becoming known for his prelude and for other great pieces. And so we'd love to play your next concerto. And it didn't end up that they even got to premiere it because it took him 4 years to get undepressed, you might say. And it happens to people, and how discouraging. Again, if you're all gone next week, I'll assume it was like you couldn't find a parking place, but maybe you'll transfer to another class. So we're gonna play for you. But Marjorie's gonna come up here, she's gonna play an E flat just for a minute, and I'm gonna show you how melodies exist in nature, you might say. And then Chris will come out and we will play. I've got to check my time. We're just right at time. E flat up, Papa Bear, E flat. Exactly. So, Chris, you want to get a half stick on the piano here? So, I'm going to find this note. Okay, play it. Okay, keep going. See, these are notes that are contained in just a plain old note, and they're called overtones, so I'm going to just follow that melody just quickly. So you play a little bit every... So that's the third note, and then there's the next note. That's the next note, and that's kind of the next note. So it's... Chopin did that, great composers, they just do it intuitively, they know. So great composers just know that you don't crowd all the low notes with notes that are too close together. So the higher the notes get on the piano, for example, the closer together they can be. So that's just fun to know about. And so now we're going to play for you the first movement, and that'll end today's lesson and lecture, if you will. And then you're going to all come like 2 days early to get parking if you had trouble this week. and there are ways to commute from like the Missoula College. I want to know about that, if there's open parking over there, and to just take a 10-minute bus ride. And it drops you off right here by the music building. So, okay, here we go. This is Chris Hahn. He's the orchestra. This piece was written in 1901. Alexander Ziloty, the famous cousin, student of Liszt, great friend and mentor to Rachmaninoff, did the world premiere twice with him. The first time he was the second piano because he was a student of Liszt, he was a great pianist. So they premiered it as a two-piano piece like you'll hear it. And then he was, interestingly, the conductor of the Moscow Philharmonic during that time. So he was the conductor of the world premiere of the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto. So here we go. This is the first movement with that opening Volga boat song, Russian melody, low in the piano, deep in the voice, and then the beautiful second theme, and then he goes wild. So you see, he came out of his depression. Oh, let's hear a little of that. That was the inspiration, in a way, of this. From the Vespers. Ave Maria is our translation. So you'll listen at home. Think of it though, he wasn't a very religious man, but he had a sort of part of his life with all of this farming out of selling of estates and moving to St. Petersburg and moving to Moscow and availing himself of the Russian Orthodox services and hearing the low men's voices because women couldn't sing in church, I believe, right, in that time, maybe even so now because it's Orthodox. And so he heard that sort of do, 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 the man's voice, and then he heard the women, of course, in other concerts at St. Petersburg or the Moscow Conservatory, or Lilacs. He wrote this song for a friend that you'll hear next week. Anyway, this is such beautiful music. He had, there's so many stories that you'll know why I have this kind of thing about Alexander Zloty, who was the first cousin of Rachmaninoff. Because Alexander Zloty's daughter-in-law lived in Missoula on Eddy Street for about a year. And she was my friend. And she would tell endless stories of the escape from Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution in the middle of the night with the horses covered with white sheets so they couldn't be seen by the searchlights in the dead of winter on the frozen Baltic Sea. But Alexander just believed in his cousin, and he just kept nudging him. And so we'll get more of this next week. And I just appreciate it so much, and I hope you're here next week too, because otherwise I'll teach the class from hell. Or maybe I am. So it's great to have you, those of you that are returning. So fun. Is there anyone absent today? Raise your hand. If you've never found parking. So we'll find out, I guess, from our attendants. Do you have anything, Karen, you want to add?
So regarding the parking, we do have a limited number of Molly parking permits that we had left from pre-pandemic sales, and before the parking group wanted to do their own stuff. So for this group, those would be $20, and you could park in either hourly or permit. And so because we've got one session down, you'd have one other day to use on something else. But it might be wise, since we're on this side of campus, we can see how many we can dig up. So if any of you are interested, just give us a call or stop in over at the office and we'll see what we have left. Okay? All right. Are you done, Stephen? Are you going to take your final bow?
Well, thanks again, and I'll see you next Wednesday. And I don't necessarily send out the PowerPoints in advance because it isn't about trying to guess what we're going to do. It's more fun to sort of experience it and then go, I think, and you can tell me otherwise, but go home and then review and then listen to the whole thing and go through the PowerPoint one by one, and you sort of get a storyline that is meant to be, but we just won't take that time always here, just snippets that let you enjoy the music and not just the thoughts, okay? So have a great week. Thank you so much.